Good morning, everyone. How is everybody?
Ready and ready.
This is our 12th Christmas, sharing with you all up here. And the years just go so quickly by. It's a great blessing to be here and a great blessing to be in friendship with all of you. I'm struck. We had a Christmas moment last night, and these things come, for me anyway, out of the blue. They kind of come in their own time. Hi, Erica. Nice to see you. We were invited. For those, most of you know that we, as a Sangha, we purchased a retreat facility. We purchased a facility west of town here. It's Ananda Center at Laurelwood. And it is a fairly large facility. It's on about 225 acres. But it was part of what was, for about 100 years, a thriving and dynamic spiritual center. It was a village. The actual facility we have was their high school. And they had at one point 500 kids, 60 staff and faculty. And it was alive. It was just so alive with aspiration for meaning in this world and connected to Christ. And the Seventh-day Adventists throughout the world, they do extraordinary work in helping people with health, with vitality, with love of God. It's a remarkable movement out there. But that particular campus and village was in a fading cycle when we found it in 2010. And we purchased it in 2011. And it's been an odd juxtaposition because we purchased what was functionally the heart of this entire village. And much of the village, much of their services and stuff had moved out of the valley. But there's still a strong Seventh-day Adventist presence there. And frankly, they just don't know quite what to do with us. They're really glad that, I think, that what went in there was not what was going to go in there, which was a minimum security prison. Although I'm not sure all the time that they're glad that we are the choice. And across the 5 years now, almost 5 years that we've been there, there have been a few exchanges of sharing as a community. When we first were there the first summer, we had a potluck on the lawn, and many of the members came. And they have annual corn fests and strawberry fests and different things. And occasionally our members will go and join in that. But they actually invited us specifically. One of the Valley members said, an elder of our church asked if you would all come, invited you to come to our Christmas caroling last night. And about 15 of us showed up. It doubled the congregation for the evening. And they just shared so sweetly. Jesus is their guru. Jesus is their access to the divine. And it is such an unconditioned love that they hold, and such an unconditioned yearning and reaching for communion, for awakening, a connection with God through the life and through the living presence of Jesus. And it's a fascinating thing because as much as they're able, they try and use the Bible literally, which is a fairly compelling thought. What if we took the words of Yogananda literally and actually tried to apply them on a daily basis, moment by moment by moment? It's a remarkable thing. So anyway, we were there, and it started off very fresh and light with some classic worldly caroling, and then we went into their music book. And it was just filled, the first part of it was just filled with dozens and dozens and dozens of Christmas songs. And we sang deeply spiritual Christmas songs. We just sang, and just the room was just filled with so much light. It was just seamless. There was no Ananda, there was no Seventh-day Adventist. There was just the light of Christ. And then they told stories, and one woman told a beautiful story from World War I about an orphan who was really in dire straits, and a woman found him on the street and took him home. But her home was an orphanage, and the orphanage took care of him. And there was a picture of Jesus on the wall with a little boy sitting, a little child sitting in Jesus' lap. And the little boy just so fell in love with that picture. And the power of that image, that there was God cradling the child. And all of the pain and all of the sadness of the loss of his family and the war-torn country he was living in and the dire straits and the sadness of his life, he could feel the power of God's love through that picture. And he fell in love with it. Well, Christmas week was coming, and he on Christmas Eve he went up and he made a big pile of chair and books and got up on top of it, and he was just holding on and just praying for God to take him past even the orphanage into a place where he could have a family. He could feel that love made palpable. It was hanging on to the picture, and as he was hanging on and praying so deeply, he was there a long time, he kind of fell asleep in the middle of the prayer. He just kind of was holding his head against Jesus' lap, and as he fell asleep, he kind of toppled a little bit, and it knocked the chair down, knocked all the stuff, and pulled the picture down, and the picture got destroyed in the falling. He was just heartsick. And there he was. And the prayer had been for a family. And he was just no place to stand, no place to be. The very thing that was dearest to him, he'd managed to destroy. And so anyway, the short story is in the morning, he's kind of not showing up for the Christmas things, and he's just kind of hiding there in the corner, avoiding. And the woman who owned the orphanage went and found him, and she just said, you're more important than the picture. And would you come and join us? Would you come and join everybody else for the giving of the gifts? And he said, okay. And he kind of went in, and he was kind of off on the side, and everybody else got gifts and the distribution of the gifts. And at the end of it, he didn't get a gift. Santa came in, and he didn't get one. And he was... he knew he wasn't really worthy of one anyway, especially after what had happened and stuff. And so he was just kind of sitting there. And the woman came up to him and said, did you get a gift? And he said, no, but that's okay. And she said, well, I think you actually have a gift, but it was too big to bring in here. Would you come with me? And she took his hand, and they walked down the street to this beautiful home. And into the home. And she took him upstairs, and there... she had him open a door into a room. And there was the picture. It's a little boy's room, but there was the same picture that he had destroyed. And he started weeping. And she said, do you like this room? And he says, oh yes, that picture, it's everything to me. And she said, well, do you know that the one that you destroyed was a copy of this one? This is the original. And that this room was the room of my son and my husband died many years ago. And I've left the room like this. And she said, do you like this room? He said, oh, yes. And she said, would you like to live here? And she took and adopted him. The message of Christmas, the message of Christ, is so human. It's so profound, it's so deep, but the call isn't beyond our human hearts. It's the very center. And it's a deep response to the yearning we all have. And it doesn't get answered necessarily the way we think it should, thank goodness. But it always gets answered. It was an interesting moment afterwards because the woman who told that story, afterwards there were cookies and we went in and we shared cookies and we were all standing around chatting. And I had the inspiration, I'm not sure I was not sure it was a good idea, but I wanted to give something back for the evening. And so I asked if it was okay if we sang a song for them. We sang Christmas Mystery, which we'll sing at the end of the service today. And it's a deeply mystical and just beautiful and haunting Christmas song. And it's one that's unique to us because Swami Kriyananda wrote it. And they were very courteous, and they said, well, okay. And so we sang to them. And at the end of it, I could see the man who'd invited me was so deeply touched that we'd offered that. And the whole group was kind of a little amazed that Christian music, such deeply beautiful Christian music, could come from this, this group that was only somewhat maybe better than the maximum security prison. And afterwards, a woman who told the story that I just related, she said, where did that come from? I mean, who are you guys? And we'd met her before, but she said, do you worship God? I said, well, yes, we do. As a matter of fact. And she said, I thought you worshipped a bunch of gods. And we had this beautiful talk, and I just said, how can there be more than one God? God is omnipresent. There's only one thing. It's the love that we feel in your church here. It's the love that your story represented. How can there be anything else? And she said, we take the Bible literally, which is such a beautiful commitment. But I said, can you imagine that maybe the Bible has been distorted or misinterpreted? I mean, there's even different interpretations of the Bible you can read and buy, and even little words that are significant get changed. How is it possible? And she said, well, do you believe in creation? Do you believe the earth is more than 6,000 years old? I said, I got no idea. I wasn't there. I wasn't there a billion years ago. I wasn't there 6,000 years ago. I've got no way of dealing with that. I'm not a theosophist. I'm not a theologian. I'm not somebody who can work with, these kinds of questions. And I said, what is the first commandment? And she said, well, it's to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul. I said, yeah. And what's the second? It's like unto the first, to love thy neighbor as thyself. I said, that, and the Bible says, be still and know. I said, that's all I know. That's it. That's what defines us. And that is the pathway to the awakening of Christmas. She wanted to go down the road of, why do you worship on Sunday? I don't know. It's a Roman calendar. What is the first day? Who knows what's the seventh day? Having a day, though, having a day of rest, committed to an inner life. That's important. Do it at the end of the week. I don't care what your week is. Take time to be in the presence of Spirit so that the light of God, that joy, that mellow joy of God's presence can continue to grow. Because it was so sweet. They were such kind people in that room. There was so much light of Christ in there. They're no different from us. We need to get past theology. We need to get past differences. It's just about the love of God and the love shared with each other. This is from Whispers from Eternity. Demand for opening of the spiritual eye, the eastern star of wisdom. Bless me, Father, that I behold the eastern star of wisdom. May it shine before my human eyes as much in daylight as in darkness. Long my eyes were blinded by the tinsel glitter of materiality. Seeing things always outwardly, I saw not the spirit behind and within them. I saw the mustard seed of matter, but spied not the oil of spirit that it contained. My third eye of wisdom is now opened. Oh, may it always be so. Let the gaze of my single eye of realization penetrate through every veil of matter, to behold the infinite presence of Christ everywhere. Bless me that my sacred wise thoughts follow the star of knowledge and lead me to the Christ in everything.
Celebration. Not only because we're going to have cookies after service, but because we're celebrating the birth of Jesus in that tiny form many years ago, but also the birth of divine awareness in all of us. Whether we're new on the spiritual path, when we first find the path, We surround ourselves with people who can support us on our journey, and we're new on the path. So we're learning to go deeper, we're learning techniques and practices, and we're learning to open our heart. But whether we've been on the path a day or a year or 20 years, we're awakening to that realization of that oneness that Diva was talking about every moment. A friend called it on the path, it's like having CPR, having that constant process of re-inspiration, constantly awakening that deepening awareness of who we really are. And how do we awaken that awareness? Well, one is by meditation. Again, we talk about that every week. We're going to have a special day on Wednesday. It's an 8-hour period. I call it an 8-hour period of worship because it's periods of meditation interspersed with chanting, with recordings of Swami Kriyananda chanting, of Yogananda chanting, readings, and chants where this was a tradition that Yogananda created, spiritual Christmas. We have our spiritual Christmas so that we can feel inside that presence of Christ. What is that happening when our hearts open and we begin to feel love, peace, joy, power, all those qualities of spirit? How else do we awaken that awareness? Is by sharing. This is the season of giving. We give to each other. We give to our family, our friends. We remember those that are not with us. We remember those that are far away, those that are serving our country. And then all the other people, what about the people too that are in need? Again, in that beautiful church last night that we were in, they had this lovely Christmas tree in the corner, and they all raised, the whole congregation, they raised money and they bought gifts for so many families in the local area in Gaston who are in need. There's so many people in need. Remembering to give to those in need. Not only, though, things on a physical level, which are important, they support people, but love. Yogananda said, when I'm gone, only love can take my place. Are we sharing love in those moments? Are we sharing kindness, compassion? Remembering also that each gift we give is so unique, it's so special. It can be a great thing or it can be a small thing. But if it comes from us, it's very special. Even, what does the Gita say? Even a fruit, a flower, or a leaf offered in my name will be received with great joy because it comes from you and who you are. So it doesn't need to be a big thing. Again, this is the season of giving, of remembering. We were talking about that movie, The Little Drummer Boy. I think it was last year. We haven't seen it this year, but last year we saw a claymation version of it, and it was actually quite well done. This is way before all the wonderful, technology we have now. But it's the most beautiful story of the little drummer boy. He sees the three kings, and they're offering all these incredibly beautiful gifts, and he doesn't have anything to give, he thinks, outwardly, but he loves that baby Jesus, and he has his drum, and he plays his drum. We know the story. It's so touching. And then remembering to pray, Lord, keep me strong and steadfast on this path to self-realization. It's so easy. We talked about last week in this season when we get busier, more activities, events, and things to do that we forget. Lord, keep me strong and steadfast on this path. Keep me strong and steadfast. The masters are there with us. Christ, the veil's thin when a master comes into this world and leaves this world. So here we are, coming upon the birth of Christ. Feel for his presence. He's there. He's waiting for us to give him his love and to share it with everyone. I want to end, which is Yogananda's words. He wrote a beautiful poem for this Christmas season. He wrote it in 1936. It's called Let Us Rejoice. And I want to give James a copy. There you go. So let's just take a moment and close our eyes and take these words as our own prayer. Roll the shoulders back. Feel the heart expanding, relaxing. Relax the mind, offering ourselves completely. Let us make this Christmas a real celebration of the birth of the Holy Child by striving to realize the consciousness which he attained. Let us make this celebration an uplifting and spiritual experience. Let us use it as an opportunity to express the universal Christ love for all people and all creatures. Let us rejoice and give thanks for the wonderful gift of light and love from the great giver. Let us once more resolve to discipline ourselves, to control our bodies, our minds, and our emotions, to strive ever toward Christ's understanding. Let us establish the Prince of Peace as our inner ruler so that we may meet our crosses and tests of life with power, victory, and tranquility. Let us meditate until we perceive the Christ in our own hearts. Let us learn to love those who love us not. Let us break all our mental boundaries of color, creed, and nationality and receive all, even our inanimate and animal brothers, in the endless, all-embracing arms of our Christ consciousness. This will be a true and fitting celebration of the coming of the Christ to this earth. Let us rejoice and give thanks. Peace, joy, peace. And now we'll have some music.